They fought street to street, battling their way into the heart of the Libyan capital, Tripoli. It was in the summer of 2011 that France 24 broadcast this award-winning documentary, following Hussam Najjair and his men as they fought against those loyal to Muammar Gaddafi. We'll see Hussam again shortly, 10 years on, to see if the fight amongst the whirlwind of the Arab Spring for him was worth it. The assault on Tripoli had come after people had seen regimes and dictators fall, notably in the neighbouring countries of Tunisia and Egypt. In the east of Libya, in Benghazi, a national transitional council had declared itself the only legitimate body. As France became the first country to formally recognise it in March of 2011, French fighter jets carried out strikes, along with US and UK missiles, to drive Gaddafi forces back from an advance on Benghazi. Over the coming months, thousands of bombardments by the international coalition to ease the anti-Gaddafi forces' route into Tripoli before it was taken. Muammar Gaddafi himself fled the capital, but kept insisting his regime had not fallen.
وهذا النظام البديع من المستحيل الإطاحة به. كيف يطاح بنظام متجسد في كل المواطنين الذين هم بالملايين؟ أما التشدق بالإطاحة بنظام القذافي هذا مدعاة للضحك.
A few months later, in October, the last decisive battle in the city of Sirte as Gaddafi himself was captured and killed. Well, the last 10 years, though, have been tumultuous for Libya. A series of attempts to form a legitimate government have failed, and once again, war has raged. The country also hit by the rise of the Islamic State group, which briefly took control of parts of the country. In 2015, a UN-supported government of national accord took power in Tripoli, but then the forces of the eastern strongman, Khalifa Haftar, began an attempt to take control, by 2019 advancing on the capital itself. His forces, though, eventually failed, although his power base remains in the east. Libya is still, then, a fractured country. Well, Gwendolyn de Bono with Josh Vardy revisit Libya for France 24.
When the revolution happened, I was here in Tripoli, but my family is based in Benghazi, and the revolution started there, so we decided to go to participate, not to sit and watch from home. It was one of the best times of my life.
Now the country is divided, and the only thing we have not got is a line between the two sides. It's hard to feel where a reconciliation will come together.
وحاليا متواجد في بنغازي من منتصف 2018 تحديدا في قناة الحدث، القناة المعروفة دعمها للقوات المسلحة الجيش الوطني بقيادة المشير خليفة حفتر.
If they speak against anyone, it will be a big problem. You take care about your question about that. You have no right to speak freely.
We knew that he was here to become another authoritarian dictator in Libya.
A decade may have gone by, but Hussam Najjair hasn't experienced anything like that night in August 2011. At the time, he was 32 and living in Ireland, but he decided to come back to his home country to fight. The rebel joined the Tripoli Brigade. After a summer of fighting against troops loyal to Muammar Gaddafi, Sam and his victorious comrades entered the Libyan capital.
We arrived down this street into what was then called the Green Square. Now we call it Martyr Square. And this is 10 years later. We see people moving freely around, and it's a good thing to see. When we arrived to the entrance of the square, I remember that I had said to myself,
Libya is free. I'm absolutely destroyed, mentally, physically. But inside, I'm screaming with joy.
I hadn't slept for 3 days before that, so I was starved and exhausted of energy at this point after fighting for at least 16 hours. I don't have much concentration anymore to fight. Once Martyr Square had fell, we knew that the end of Gaddafi was close. Coming into Martyr Square 10 years ago was probably the most exciting and happy time of my life.
10 years ago, it was the educated youth of Benghazi who first found the courage to stand up against Gaddafi's power. News of the euphoric fever taking hold of the eastern city reached Shada. She was studying in Tripoli and begged her father to let her return to Benghazi.
During that time when we went to Benghazi, we told our father, actually, me and my mom, if we went there, we just want to stay at home. We want to participate. We want to go in the streets and protests and so on. And that's actually what happened. So we were going in the streets, and we noticed that there was an area for women to protest, and there was a man area. And with time, me and my mom and a couple of friends, we became like kind of in charge of that area. You do have a voice, and it matters. And there was a feeling that I felt for the very first time in my life.
Coastal towns in the west also started to rise in Benghazi's wake. Mohammed al-Bibi comes from Misrata. He took up arms at 16 to defend the city against the troops of the regime. Today, he's been reunited with his old comrades in arms positioned close to Sirte. In this city 10 years ago, he crossed the path of Gaddafi himself. The Libyan leader was on the run and had left his golden pistol in his vehicle. Mohammed seized it just before the dictator was captured.
When I got the gun, there were lots of shots being fired, and we didn't understand anything. But when we saw the huge crowd, we tried to understand what had happened, and we learned about the arrest of Gaddafi. And that was a great joy. For me, it was a much greater joy than getting my hands on that gun. We thought that with the arrest of Gaddafi and his son, the war would end in Libya. We thought we would have a happy life and that Libya would be free like Dubai. But we saw that nothing had changed. It had actually got worse.
The civil war never really ended. Libya was cut in two after Marshal Haftar took power in the east in 2014. In Tahuna, 60 kilometers south of Tripoli, several mass graves were discovered last summer. The town served as a military base for Haftar's men during his assault on the capital. He was defeated. Before fleeing the town, men from the militia murdered men, women and children. Families bring photos of their missing loved ones to the Tahuna town hall in the hope that they can be identified. Their children were abducted in front of them. Local officials have a hard time hearing the terrible tales.
I'm not asking you for anything. I don't want money. I don't care about all that. I just want my sons.
What's his name?
This is Mohammed Yunus Ali Mukhtar.
How old is he?
He was born in 2000 and this one in 2002.
So he's 20 years old.
They came together in the middle of the night. They knocked on the door. I saw a man who asked me, "Where are your sons?" I said, "What do you mean? They're sleeping. They're asleep." I opened the window and saw that he had blocked the whole neighborhood. Then I figured out who he was. They searched all the houses and broke the door down. They broke the door down and took my children. I swear they were asleep. They were in their pajamas, under their duvets. They took them from under their duvets. I saw him pulling the t-shirt like that, and I was screaming, "Why? They're children. What did they do?" They told me, "No, we have to question them."
These are my brothers. They were killed. I don't have any other brothers. They took their property, ransacked their homes. They left their children traumatized. This one left 4 children, the other 7 children, and the other 4 children. The last 2 were to be married. These criminals stole their happiness. Haftar the criminal, Haftar the war criminal. There is no government in the east, there is only a criminal killing machine. Benghazi is not a city of peace, as they say. Benghazi is a city of terror, dominated by force, a city of murder.
The members of the Al-Qanya militia responsible for the Tahuna massacres fled for refuge in Benghazi. This large coastal city on the east side of Libya is still traumatized by the war against the Islamic State group. The west of the country didn't experience jihadist occupation, and it was by facing them that Marshal Khalifa Haftar took control here. Journalists cannot work freely in Benghazi. The Haftar camp wants to show strict order and discipline. This military college trains future officers for the LNA, the self-proclaimed Libyan National Army, supported by neighboring Egypt and Russia. When the deputy head of this school talks about the revolution, he emphasizes the chaos that was unleashed.
After the collapse of the army, of the institutions and of the security apparatus in the country, according to the instructions of the General Staff, the military college was created. The military college takes students aged 18 to 23.
من أعمار 18 سنة إلى 23 سنة.
Many young recruits joined up after the war against the Islamic State group.
Here in the East, we were much more affected by the Muslim Brotherhood and the extremists. Members of our families and other loved ones were killed in this war, so we decided to join the army. The blood of the martyrs who were sacrificed will not be wasted. We are the new blood in the army ranks, and this new blood will be better than those before.
Our motto is, we win or we die. Through training, we prepare their psychology for the sacrifice and the service to their country.
These young people also say they are suffering from the division of their country.
What hurt me the most is everything that we young people have lost since 2011, and the division of the country into East and West. It's hard for me to see my country divided. That's the most difficult thing. I have friends and family in the West, and the situation means I can't speak to them face to face or go pay them a visit. We've been speaking on the phone for 5 years from a distance. I hope that the army will win and Libya will be united.
This fracture between the east and the west of the country explains Ahmed Ben Ashur's situation. Every day he presents the news on the Al Hadat network run by the military. In 2011 he was a young revolutionary before being arrested by one of the militias in Tripoli supported by Turkey. Once out of prison he decided to go east.
I was tortured, beaten, insulted by this armed group. After the intervention of friends and neighbors, I was freed from Tripoli. I decided to abandon political activities in this city managed by militias. But in Benghazi, it's not the case. I've decided to continue my journey and support what we see as a sacred cause.
Since then, he has not seen his family, who stayed in Tripoli.
It's impossible for me to go. I would be arrested at the airport or taken to a military camp. Unfortunately, the young are now lost between wars, conflicts, and ongoing political division.
return to the front in Sirte, where the forces of the West and the East meet. But this is a time of ceasefire. Everyone goes about their daily tasks while awaiting orders. A life of men weary from the battles they've fought since the revolution.
I was an engineer for the Al Waha oil company in 2011. We forgot everything during the war, all our past studies and our work experiences. We forgot everything. We don't have the possibility to get married now. Everybody here wants to get married and have children. They want to have prospects, but nobody is married. Every year or year and a half, a new war starts. I don't want to force a woman to live with me in a house and then head to the front in Tripoli or who knows where and leave her alone. I don't know, it's just not possible. I want to go and study overseas to get a master's or a doctorate and come back to the country with a better education for the benefit of our country and the world in general.
Leaving Libya, a dream shared by young people in the East and the West. This evening at the Tripoli port, it's the opening of an exhibition put on by Shada and her friends. Shada is exceptional in not wanting to leave Libya.
Most of my friends, they all left. I'm the only one. I was like saying I'm in my own country, but I don't really feel like home because all my friends are gone. But after it, I think in 2016, life started to get a little bit better. It's not better. Sometimes the roads are blocked for some reason. Sometimes there is no electricity, there is no phone coverage, there is no internet, but yet we're still working. Doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but we try to cope.
For these young people, coping or hanging on is necessary to remember where they came from and hold on to their narrow slice of freedom won at a high price 10 years ago.
Gwendolyn de Bono with Josh Vardy, revisiting Libya for France 24. Well, that's all from this week's edition. Don't forget, of course, you can catch it and the previous editions as well on our website at france24.com. More news coming up for you very shortly. Thanks for watching.